Hello, and welcome to today's on-demand Architect Masterclass. I'm your instructor, Enoch Sears. I'm a former architecture firm owner turned business consultant, and I've helped over 52 architecture firm owners stop the chaos of running a business from getting in the way of the architecture. I'll tell you more about that later. On today's class, you'll discover a step-by-step system for running your practice so that the business doesn't get in the way of your craft and success as an architect. You'll also discover 4 common misconceptions that hold architects back from getting more creative fulfillment and success in their practices. You'll discover the problems that these misconceptions cause, as well as their solutions. You'll also discover the 3 pillars of what I call the SMART practice framework, a step-by-step system for structuring your practice so the business doesn't get in the way of the craft and your success as an architect. Now, imagine this. You wake up well rested after a good night's sleep. You put on some coffee. You pick up your phone and scroll through your email. Not much there because your team has everything handled. You get ready for work, and when you get into the office, everyone's working quietly away. They know exactly what to do, and they do it well. You can focus on the work you love, architecture. You love your job, and you love your firm. Life is pretty good. Gone are the days of having clients question your fees or struggling to balance the workload between not enough work or too much. You're doing fewer projects, ones you care about, and you have the time to do them exceptionally well. Plus, you make more money doing them, and you have the time to enjoy it. You're experiencing what I call the 3 F's of architecture firm ownership: fulfillment, freedom, and rewarding finances. Some of this material you may be familiar with or you may have heard before, but I encourage you to watch this class with fresh eyes. Just like reading a book for the 3rd time, you get new and powerful insights. So whether you've had your firm for just a few years or several decades, if you have anywhere between 3 and 20 team members, and you're doing anywhere between $300,000 to $3 million worth of revenue a year, then you are in the right place. On the other hand, if you're currently working for an architecture firm or you have more than 20 team members, then while this will be a valuable training for you, it's not designed for you. However, of course, you're welcome to stay. Now, before we get into today's training, make sure you put your full attention and focus on this presentation. Close out any other tabs, close your door, make sure you're in a quiet and private space, put your phone on Do Not Disturb so you can focus fully. Now, before we dive into our solution today, we need to identify the problem. And here's the harsh reality. Running an architecture firm today is harder than ever before. Clients are expecting more for less. There's reduced project timelines, and they're definitely not willing to pay more. And so especially small architecture firms are getting squeezed here, having to deliver more work for less fees in less amount of time. So if you run a small architecture practice, you may be dealing with some of these issues. You may be spending 80% of your time on admin work instead of design. And it's frustrating when the running of the business gets in the way of doing the architecture. You may be spread thin working on many small projects instead of larger long-term projects that take less work and are more fulfilling. You may feel underutilized, frustrated that you have the capability or ability to do larger or different projects, but be stuck doing a lot of smaller projects. And let's not forget fees. Caught between a rock and a hard place, barely managing with the fees you get, but afraid that if you raise fees, you may lose the projects. And what ultimately happens here is that the complexity of business gets in the way of you being an architect. And this is an extremely frustrating and discouraging place to be. So to deal with this, you may try to work harder, which can cost you your health, your freedom, missing time with your kids, your marriage, skipping vacations, going in early, leaving late. You may miss out on life if you just react to jobs that come to you, hoping that if you work harder, that better projects and profits will come. And this leads to one place: overwhelm and burnout. Now, you may think that the reason why running a small firm is so difficult is inexperienced staff, uneducated clients who don't get the value of design, other firms, competition from other firms who offer bottom-of-the-barrel fees, that you don't have the right project management software, or that you just need to work harder. And you may have tried these and they didn't work for you, so you may be resigned to this is just the way it is. Running an architecture practice is difficult. And you may even doubt your ability as an architecture firm owner. Frustrated that your firm doesn't match up or reflect your ability as an architect. And years can pass by like this, just getting by, dealing with the peaks and the troughs with nothing substantial to show for your life's work. So let me ask you a question. Should you have to sacrifice your health, your relationships, your financial well-being, and your sanity to do work that you enjoy? If your answer is no, then be sure to watch this video all the way through because, as I mentioned before, you'll discover a framework for running a firm so that it doesn't get in the way of your craft and success as an architect. Because here's the thing. If you want to be able to say, I'm 100% confident of my ability to focus on the creative work and get the recognition and compensation that I deserve, you need a proven system for running your firm. Now, before we jump into the rest of today's training, let me quickly tell you who I am and why you should listen to me. I'm a former architecture firm owner turned business consultant. As I mentioned, my name is Enoch Sears. 7 years ago, I had an architecture firm. It was a constant headache and balancing act between serving my clients, getting the projects, and trying to be the best architect that I could be. It lasted less than a year before I decided to shut it down. It was discouraging. I went to an Ivy League school. I worked at several successful firms where I was mentored, but none of that prepared me for success as an architecture firm owner. So I've made it my personal life's work to help other architecture firm owners and make sure that they don't fall into the same trap. So I consulted everyone I knew who was running a successful practice, read everything available on running a successful firm, and added that to my own experience to create and develop what is now the Smart Practice Framework. Now I'm recognized as one of the most in-demand architect business consultants in the industry. And to date, I've helped more than 52 architecture firm owners build and set up their practice so that it doesn't get in the way of their craft and success as an architect. I'm just a normal guy. I live in California. I have 6 children, and well, perhaps that's not too normal. My wife and I are reminded every single day that 6 kids is a lot. Here's a picture of us on a recent family vacation to Hawaii. I have 4 daughters and 2 sons. Here's a picture of me speaking at the Texas Society of Architects, and here I am. I was asked to give a workshop at the AI National Convention. Now, let's turn the lens back to you. There's a great quote that I like that goes like this: I would have written you a shorter letter, but I didn't have enough time. There is power in simplicity. And so when we talk about you getting the results that you want in your firm, we can break it down into these 3 individual pieces. On the left-hand side, we have the inputs that are available to you. These are your resources. You put your resources into the machine, which is your firm, and it's going to spit out some outputs. Now, what do the outputs depend upon? Well, it depends on the inputs that you put in, and it depends on what's happening here inside the machine. So when we talk about inputs, this would be things like time, energy, and money. That's all you have. That's all I have. That's all anyone has. Now, it goes through the machine of your firm, and on the other side, we're going to get, hopefully, high-quality work product, life balance, and substantial financial reward, or as I like to say, fulfillment, freedom, and finances. So the question is, what is it that needs to happen in here, in this machine, in this little black box? What is it that needs to happen to be able to give you the fulfillment, freedom, and finances that you want? Well, that's what we're going to be going over in the rest of our class today. First of all, however, let's take a look at our 4 misconceptions. Misconception number 1 is that I am a service provider. Now, in your firm, whether you're a designer, landscape architect, interior designer, architect, you have the role of architect, right? But here's the thing, as the business owner, you have another role. And that role, of course, is the role of business owner. Now, there's a distinction between these 2 roles. These 2 roles are radically different. And author Robert Kiyosaki gives an excellent explanation of this distinction in his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which, by the way, is one of the best-selling personal finance books of all time. And he calls it the cash flow quadrants. And it talks about the career path that someone can go through. Now, in the upper left-hand corner, we have employee, the stage of the employee. When you're an employee, you have a job. You work for someone else, meaning that you're trading your time for money, and you're also giving someone else money because they're leveraging your work. Now, after that, we have self-employed. This is where many small architecture firm owners find themselves, that you either got laid off or you decided to start your firm or you inherited the firm, and now you're acting in the role of a service provider. So this is where the role of the service provider exists. You have a job. Again, you're trading your time for money. Now, we can progress past that into the role of business owner. And the distinction about a business owner is that as a business owner, you have people and you have systems that work for you. And then the last part of the cash flow quadrant here is an investor. An investor has money to work for them. So what we ultimately need to do in the Smart Practice Framework is move you from exclusively on the role of self-employed where you're trading time for money and actually develop your role as a business owner where you actually are really truly leveraging people and systems in your firm. This is what gives you the freedom. So when you get this wrong, you feel stuck in the weeds. When you're focused exclusively on the role of the architect but not spending enough time in the role of the business owner, you feel like you're wearing too many hats, you're exchanging time for money, and you're also not building a long-term asset, meaning that if you were to get run over by a bus tomorrow or get sick or get disabled, the firm would completely disappear. And unfortunately, this very thing I've heard about happening to firms. Personally, I've talked to firms that this has happened to. It's absolutely horrible. On the other hand, when you get this right, you have people and systems that are working for you. You have leverage. You're freed up to act strategically. You have more creative expression because of that freedom, and you're actually building a long-term asset in your firm, meaning that your firm now has value. It's opening up new possibilities to be able to sell the firm in the future if you'd like, or hand it over to internal transition. All right? So in quick summary, misconception number one is I'm a service provider. And of course that's true. You're in the business of providing architectural services. But the reality is that you're also a business owner. And there's specific distinction that goes along with that. The solution is to be able to leverage people and systems as a business owner. Misconception number two is, Enoch, that makes sense. I understand the idea of acting as a business owner, but right now I'm so tied up dealing with project issues, answering emails, putting out fires. I can't afford the time to work on the business because I'm working in the business all the time. I completely get it. I mean, no one has any extra time. None of my clients who came to me ever had any extra time. But what I'd have you consider is this. Art Gensler, founder of the largest architecture firm in the world. I think they have 140 offices. They're doing almost $1 billion of revenue. Jark Ingels, from a very young age, very successful architect. Jark Ingels, Art Gensler, myself, you, we all have one thing in common. We all have 168 hours every single week. And so what I'd have you consider here is that the key is not that we don't have time to work on the business. It's just that we may need to move the direction and reappropriate the time that we do have. There's a great clip here from Braveheart. I want to play this really quickly where William Wallace, young William Wallace, the boy here, is looking at his father's sword. His father has died. His uncle is imparting some words of wisdom to him. And this relates directly to this misconception number two that we're talking about here, where I'm just too busy to working in the business to work on the business. Let's have a listen.
First, learn to use this. Then I'll teach you to use this.
I absolutely love that movie. It just gives me goosebumps. And so here we see the distinction. As architecture firm owners, we want to run into the fray. We want to wield the sword. We want to slay the dragon. We want to put out all the fires and get everything done. But the key here is to move from opportunistic thinking to strategic thinking. Work smarter, not harder. The old worn-out cliche. So when we're being opportunistic, we're responding to what happens in a reactive mode. When we move into strategic thinking and action, we're actually creating what happens. Now, I want to give you a quick example of what this would look like in one aspect of your firm, which would be business development. The vast majority of small architecture firms get their projects through referrals, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, that is an opportunistic mode of operating. You're just waiting for the phone to ring, and it has some downside to that. The downside is that you're probably going to get more of the same. Because of your past clients and the people who are referring your work, they're going to refer you more of the same work. So ultimately, you're at the mercy of what happens. You're at the mercy of the phone ringing and what someone else decides to do. On the flip side, strategic looks like this. You would identify the ideal clients and projects that you want to work on, and it might be a process. It might not happen overnight, right? But you plan and implement a long-term strategy. This is what it looks like being strategic in your business development. Now, I want to tell you a quick story about two villages that were the same distance from a river to illustrate this principle. Everyone in the villages, every single morning, they would get up and they would carry their buckets of water from the river to the village every single day. One day, a young child in one of the villages had this crazy idea. He said, why don't we spend time digging a canal from the river over to the village, and then we won't have to carry buckets of water anymore? Well, the villagers thought, that's a crazy idea. Why would we want to do that? We have so much going on right now. We don't have time to build a canal. It's going to take lots of effort. Well, this young boy had a lot of energy, so him and his friends went out there and they just started building the canal anyways. Well, the villagers of one of the villages saw what was happening, decided to join in, and through a group effort, they were able to create the canal that went from the river to the village. Soon the water was flowing, and before you know it, they didn't have to carry water every single day back and forth from the river to the village. So with all the free time, they were able to do other things. Now eventually, that village became so prosperous that it took over the entire region, including the other village that was still hauling the water back and forth. This is the difference between operating opportunistically, meaning let's just get done what we need to get done today, to actually spending a little bit of time every single day focused on where we want to get to in the future. Now, when you get this wrong, you just try to work harder. You may feel stuck. You may be in reactionary mode, feeling like you're jumping from fire to fire. And when you get this right, you get better results in the same amount of time. You have peace of mind because you know you're working towards a long-term strategy, and you have time for life outside of architecture. It's a beautiful thing. All right? So quick summary. Misconception number 2 is, I can't afford the time to work on my business. The reality is we need to reappropriate the time you currently have and spend some of that time working on the business, not just in the business, doing the right activities. The solution is to go from opportunistic thinking and action to strategic thinking and action. Misconception number 3 is, that makes sense, Enoch, but you know what? It's difficult out there, and we're stretched thin working on projects. We're afraid if we charge more, we risk losing projects or upsetting our clients. We're already working on razor-thin margins. All right, this is something that I hear from firm owners all the time, either that they're putting in more work than they actually have budget in the project. Maybe they're even discounting their invoices because they're putting in so much work. They look at the invoice and think, wow, I can't charge the client that. I mean, it took us too long to do this, so we're going to invoice it. I mean, they're literally bleeding money out like a leaky bucket. Or, scope creep. The client's asking for changes, but they feel bad charging the client. They don't want to upset the client. So what ultimately happens here is that money is literally bleeding out of the firm like a sieve. Now, the key here is that money is the fuel of a firm. Now, when I speak in front of live audiences, a lot of times I'll make the joke that I say, I went to architecture school because I wanted to earn a lot of money. And of course, everyone laughs because they know that none of us went to architecture school to make a lot of money. We went to architecture school because we were enthralled by the craft of architecture. We wanted to do something we enjoyed. We wanted to make an impact on the world. We wanted to be creative in our profession. But here's the key. If we don't have money to fuel the firm, then the car is going to sputter and lurch and not take us where we want to go in the right amount of time, and maybe not even make the distance, right? So when we look at money in an architecture firms, if you're running a small firm, you should be making 20% or more profit. Like, this is absolutely essential. And no one's talking about this. No one talks about this. I mean, they talk about, okay, in the good times, you may be earning 5% to 10% profit. That's the industry norm. And that's just not enough. And most firm owners don't even realize that that's enough. During the good times, it seems great. We're paying our salaries, we're paying all of our expenses, but they're not putting away a big cash reserve because we know the way the economy works, there's always going to be a down cycle. And so in the down cycle, what happens is the firms that don't have a cash reserve, that haven't invested in the business, they're exposed. They have to lay off staff. They suffer greatly. And so they get into this cycle of, during the down cycle, they're cutting back, they're shrinking, they're contracting, and then during the up cycle, they're just trying to catch up, as opposed to investing and pulling in good profit during the up cycle to then be able to reinvest during the down cycle and come out stronger. Do you see why this is so important? So here's what I'd have you consider. There are always clients who are willing to pay what you're worth, if you know, number one, how to connect with them, and number two, how to explain your value conclusively. Now, when we talk about connecting with them and explaining your value, connecting in business terms, we would call that marketing. We would call that getting in front of the client, marketing and business development. Number two, explaining your value. This is basically selling, right? But I'm not talking about the sleazy car salesman selling. I'm talking about selling architectural services, right? Presenting your services in such a way that you can pick and choose the clients you work with because they get your value. This is a skill just like anything else. And so the reality is that you've probably spent lots of time, energy, money, and effort becoming an architect, learning your craft, but probably spent little to no time or money learning how to sell or market architectural services. And so the solution is to put in place a system for positioning your firm and winning work with the right clients, because you should be able to charge very, very healthy fees, even if you're much higher than your competitors, if you know how to market and sell architectural services properly, if you have a system to position your firm to win work from the right clients. All right? So misconception number 3 is clients don't want to pay what I'm worth. I'm afraid that if we charge all the work we're putting into this, that we'll lose the projects. The truth or the reality is that although you've spent lots of time learning how to be an architect, you've probably invested little time learning to market and to sell. So the solution is to position your firm and implement a system for marketing and selling your architectural services. Now, when you get this wrong, it will be a struggle with cash flow. You may be afraid to lose projects if you raise your fees. You'll be frustrated when clients don't get your value or they negotiate you down. And you may even be caught in dipping into personal funds or credit to be able to make payroll. You'll be very vulnerable during a down market or recession. On the other hand, when you get this right, you're making 20% or better profit consistently. You're able to charge high fees and win the right projects. You have financial reserves of 6 to 12 months, peace of mind and security, and the freedom to be able to pursue the projects you want, because now you have the financial buffer. You could even take a loss on a project if you want to. You now have options instead of being forced to take on certain projects. Okay, misconception number 4 is running an architecture firm is supposed to be hard. I get it. If you were to talk with most small architecture firm owners, they would say that they're experiencing everything that we've talked about up to this point. It's true. What I'd have you consider is that there is a better way. And so this is where we come to the SMART practice framework. What is it that we need to do to be able to get the kind of fulfillment, freedom, and finances that you want and that you deserve as a practitioner? So when we look at this acronym SMART, it stands for sustainable and consistent, meaning that you have peace of mind because not only the workflow, but the money coming into and out of the firm is sustainable, consistent. You can forecast it, you can plan. M stands for mission focus, meaning there's some bigger vision or mission attached to the firm. A, autonomous. Of course, autonomous in the traditional sense means it can run by itself. Most of my clients don't want to step away from the firm. They love what they want to do, but they just want to make the firm work so it's efficient, so that it kind of takes care of itself, so they can focus on being the best architect that they can be, giving them that freedom. R, rewarding, both financially and emotionally fulfilling. And T, team-based, where you're leveraging the power of other people and succeeding through others. So this is the SMART practice. Now, what happens in here? Step number 1 is vision. Everything starts with vision. So we need to have a vision, because if we don't have a vision, not only will we be wandering around aimlessly, so will our staff. Now, when we talk about vision, vision is made up of 3 key components. Number 1, the purpose, which is what's the mountain peak? What's the reason? What's our reason for being? What's the hill that we want to climb? And what are the principles that are going to get us there? That's sort of like, what tools are we taking along the journey? And then the mission is kind of the deadline, the impact, the specific mission that we want to accomplish. Now, all 3 of these things together, the purpose, the principles, and the mission equals the vision. There are very few firms that do this properly. Well, basically because they're so overwhelmed working in the business, they don't have time to set the vision. And even if they knew how, they wouldn't know how to implement the vision so that everyone grabbed a hold of it and they used it like a team, right? But this is so essential, because here's the key. Over time is where we see the difference. When you have a vision, you make exponential growth. And I'm not just saying you need to grow the firm, but just in finances and freedom and impact and time freedom, right? Whereas if there is no vision, there might be small incremental improvements or none at all. It's a great quote here by architect Daniel Burnham. He said, "Make no little plans, they have no magic to stir men's blood." Whose blood? Well, I would submit and have you consider that this is your blood. That the vision that you set is what's going to get you excited about implementing everything we're talking about here during this class, that vision. Management guru Jim Collins says, "It's impossible to have a great life unless it is a meaningful life. And it's very difficult to have a meaningful life without meaningful work." So just as we need meaning in our lives, in our families, in our profession, the same thing goes for an architecture firm. It needs meaning. When you get this wrong, you're running your firm in a reactionary mode. Perhaps you lack clarity about what you want. You won't be able to attract the best projects and staff. On the other hand, when you get this right, when you have that crystal clear vision, and it's an exciting vision, you will have clarity and confidence. You know you're working towards long-term goals. You will attract the best clients and staff, because here's the key. When you have a vision, people aren't going to come to you because you pay them the highest salaries or because you live in the best geographic location, right? This is how you're able to attract people, even if you're not in downtown Manhattan, right? If you have the vision, people will come. Glenn Murcutt, people go from all over the world to study with Glenn Murcutt. Why is that? Because they know the culture that he represents. They're attracted to his vision and his mission. Now, you don't need to be a big organization to be able to have a vision. You can have a small organization and you can have a powerful vision. This is what we mean by creating a high-performance organization, and this is something totally within your grasp. So we have the foundation of vision. Now we need to pair that with the right projects and clients. Just recently I was talking with an architecture firm owner who's had his practice for 20 years, and he says, years ago I was working for an architect who was had a small team, and he walked by the hanging files of all the drawings, and he noticed that every single drawing was from a different client, and he just knew in his head that this is a problem. It's a problem because when you have a bunch of one-off projects, there's no consistency. And so to be able to get the SMART practice framework, a very important part of this is having the right projects and clients. And one of the keys of this is having repeat clients, having one or two repeat clients that bring in some consistency to the practice, having larger project sizes, having larger budgets, clients that have bigger budgets, and even perhaps clients where you align with their mission and their ethos. Definitely, another criteria here for the right project and client would be that you have some sort of competitive advantage and that there's demand in the market for these kind of projects, right? So when we think about how do we define right projects and right clients, these are some of the important criteria that you should be looking at. Number one, that they're repeat clients. Number two, that they have larger projects. Number three, they have bigger budgets. They have a mission. You have a competitive advantage in this kind of work, and there's enough of these kind of projects happening where there's enough demand for your services, right? There's not just two in the entire world that happen every single year. Now, when you get this wrong, not having the right clients and projects, it's going to be a struggle to make money, to get that fuel. You may be working with clients who don't value and appreciate you. You may feel burned out or even lose passion for what you're doing. On the other hand, when you get it right, you'll work with clients you love. You'll feel valued and respected, and you'll be rewarded for your creative effort. Now, we've gone over vision, we've gone over having the right projects and clients, and now we're going to get to the 3 pillars of the SMART practice framework. Pillar number 1 is having the people, right? We talked about this idea of leveraging people. So there's a key and there's really an art to leveraging people, right? We need to be able to hire the right people. We need to have systems to empower them, systems to lead them, systems to keep them engaged, and actually create a culture in the firm. This is next level leadership. So Steve Jobs said, if you create a culture where excellence is noticed and respected, then you don't have to tell people to do excellent work. So when we don't have the culture, well, let me go back a second. Every single firm has a culture. But the question is it an intentional culture or is it a culture that just happened, right? So when you get this wrong, team members aren't engaged. You may feel like you're micromanaging. You may feel like you need to babysit your staff. Your team may lack the right experience. They may even be entitled. And this feels really bad as a firm owner to have staff members who feel like, they're doing you a favor for being there when you're breaking your back for them. When you get this right, team members perform at their best. They go above and beyond, and they're happy to do so. They're proactive. They take on additional responsibility, and they grow. They're engaged in an overall mission and vision in the firm, and this ultimately creates something where the whole is greater than the sum of the individual parts. So when we have pillar number 1, people, we follow it up with pillar number 2, which are the processes. So processes here referring to systems, and I like to break the systems in a firm up into 3 basic systems. Number 1, a system to get the work, a system to do the work, and a system to support the work. When we talk about systems to get the work, we're talking about a way to be able to get the right message out to the right clients at the right time. This is the process of getting the work, right? Now, system to do the work, standard operating procedures, being able to have ways to onboard new clients, your processes and your systems to set the expectations with the clients, project startup, project management, project QA, client communication. All of this goes into that system to actually get the work done and make sure that's a very high work quality. When we talk about a system support the work, we're talking about things like hiring, people management systems, onboarding, accountability, financial management, managing the fuel of the firm, long-term and short-term planning, tracking, being able to forecast, and being able to constantly improve everything within the firm. All right? So I want to show you a couple examples. These are exercises I take my clients through when we implement the Smart Practice Framework. This is called the process roadmap. And what we do here is we on one sheet of paper, we visually put down all the processes in the firm, including the job roles that would go along with these processes. This is like step number one to being able to actually get out of your head onto a single piece of paper, what are the processes in the firm? This is the start to processing and systematizing a firm. Okay. Here's another example from another firm. You can see these are simple diagrams, but they're very, very powerful. When we talk about systemizing a firm, we're also talking about things like, here's two examples of, these are organization charts, right, that different of my clients have done. Just a simple way to be able to map out the roles in an organization, not the people. So those are just two examples of what some systems or processes might look like in your firm. Now there's others, of course. There's checklists and everything like that. When you get this wrong, you feel like you're constantly reinventing the wheel. You may have QA problems. Drawings are going out into the field with mistakes. You as the owner may be spending your time on low-value tasks because you don't have the systems to be able to automate some things. When you get this right, your team is performing efficiently and confidently. You're producing high-quality drawings and work product. You're using automations and systems to save time. So we have people, process, and number 3. These are our 3 Ps, people, process, and profit. We talked about the money. So when we talk about profit in a firm, we're talking about setting financial goals, both annually and quarterly, being able to set the right fees, not undercharging, not letting scope creep eat into projects, reinvesting into the firm, making sure that you're taking the right amount of money out of the firm so you can actually profit from the firm, and then also having money within the firm for things like incentive compensation, giving staff bonuses, etc., right? All of this managed through your key financial indicators. So actually having some dashboards so you can have your finger on the pulse of what's happening with the finances in the firm. Now, when you get this wrong, when you don't have the right profit systems in your firm, you have unpredictable revenue. You don't know what's happening. You may have cash flow issues. You don't have financial reserves. You can't reinvest in improvement. When you get it right, on the other hand, you're constantly reinvesting and improving the firm. You have plenty of money to use as a tool to invest in the practice. You have cash reserves, and you have the freedom to pursue new projects or do competition. So when this is working for you, again, you have options. You're not just forced to take on whichever projects happen to show up on your doorstep. So in summary, this is the Smart Practice Framework. Number 1, you have your inputs of time, energy, and money. Within the firm, we need the vision. We pair that with the right projects and the right clients. We have people, process, and profit. And this is what gives us our outputs of fulfillment, freedom, and finances, our 3 Fs, right? So the results of doing this correctly is that you have a practice that doesn't get in the way of your craft and success as an architect. It's as simple as that. I'm going to run through a couple examples of people that have implemented the Smart Practice Framework and the results that they got. This is architect Dan Shear. Dan Shear has a firm with 2 offices, one in Charleston, South Carolina, and one in Columbia, South Carolina. He came to me when he had 1 staff member, but over the previous 20 years, he'd had anything from, working for himself up to 14 staff members, kind of fluctuating over time depending on the economy. And he was having a conversation with his wife one night over dinner, and she looked at him and she said, "Why do you do this? You hate architecture." And he kind of looked at her and said, "No, I don't." But even as he said that, he realized that he had lost the passion. He realized that his stress level was through the roof, his health and relationships were suffering, he was feeling burned out, and he could barely pay the bills. I was talking to him and he said, "I don't know why we couldn't make things go more smoothly. I'd wake up at 3:30 a.m. thinking about something that needed to be done that day, so I'd get up and get it done. The stress level was through the roof." So what did we do? We implemented systems, trained the staff, reappropriated his time to focus more on business development, and hired key team members. Did it work? Well, it did. Dan now has a staff of 9. The quality of his work is much better, his profit is higher, and his clients, the ones he didn't fire, are very happy. In addition, Dan now has the flexibility where he can take off time without worrying what's happening in the office. He truly has a self-managed firm. Erin Morris started her firm so she could have flexibility to spend more time with her family and be able to build a practice that suited her life. But what she found was that the complexity of running a firm got in the way of her ideal life and her creative expression. She also was having a conversation with her husband where he literally told her, hey, just close down the firm. You don't need to be doing this. So she came, we worked together, we focused on creating clear job roles and expectations for the existing staff, put into place financial management systems, got into a planning rhythm so she's approaching things strategically and not just opportunistically. Did it work? Erin started achieving her vision faster than she expected, and she's truly built a firm to suit her life. This is Mel Price. Mel Price, when she came to us, she had a very, very successful firm, but she felt there were a couple things off. She felt she lacked some clarity around the business metrics and the business optics. She realized that she was bogged down in the daily happenings of the firm. They didn't have a significant cash reserve. They had unpredictable income, and she wasn't clear about the decision she should be making as a firm leader. WPA Architects is based out of Norfolk, Virginia. Mel is one of the co-founders of the firm, and last time I checked, they have a team of 12 on staff, and they're growing rapidly. What we did together is we focused on creating that culture. We added some financial management systems, and then they began targeting specialist work. Did it work? Her firm is now winning larger projects. It has higher profitability. Mel knows exactly where they stand financially. She has an amazing team and culture, and she's no longer bogged down in the weeds of the business. In addition, I was just talking to Mel recently on the phone, and she was telling me that she tries to set aside every single day 2 hours to work on the business and not just in the business. She's really excited about being a business owner and not just the service provider, although she's an excellent architect and service provider, and they do fantastic work for their clients. Now, all this might seem like a lot, and I know it comes across as quite complicated, and I was confused myself when I started learning this stuff, but what I'd ask you is, what would it mean for you if you had a copy and paste system for implementing the smart practice framework you learned about in today's training? What if you could take the already proven systems and frameworks and plug them right into your practice? This is why I've created the Smart Practice Program. In the Smart Practice Program, we work together to turn your firm into a practice that is sustainable, mission-focused, autonomous, rewarding both financially and creatively fulfilling, team-based, and frees you up to do what you do best. I developed the Smart Practice Program over the past 6 years based on my own experience helping firms, input from leading industry experts, and hundreds of thousands of dollars invested in discovering and simplifying the model that works for a firm that doesn't get in the way of your creative expression and success as an architect. The program has 3 phases. First, we'll map out the ideal structure for your firm with the right vision, the right people in the right places, and the right processes. Now, this won't be a total revamp of your practice, but clarity and pruning of what's already there. Second, we'll work with you to implement the customized systems for your firm, a system to get the work, system to do the work, and the systems to support the work. We'll identify what systems you currently have, what systems you're lacking, and put them all together. Third, we'll help you put into place systems to get your existing team to operate at their highest level, to free you up, so high-quality work gets done consistently without micromanaging. And you don't need to recreate the wheel, because my team and I, we've already done the hard work for you. You simply need to plug and play what we've already created, and we've done this for over 52 firms, so we know what works. Now, depending on the goals for your firm, we'll work together on this project for 6 months or even longer. I prefer long-term relationships with my clients as long as they are getting value. So how can you get a firm that doesn't get in the way of your craft and success as an architect? Right now, you have an important decision to make, and only you can make it. Number 1, you can be opportunistic. Try out all the thousands of possible combinations and work it out on your own. Spend the next 3 to 5 years or more and risk losing your health, relationships, and sanity in the process. Or, number 2, be strategic. Get my proven system, hand it to you on a platter in my Smart Practices program so you can get a firm that powers your creative fulfillment and success. So right now, I'm looking for a few more of my dream clients. So if you want the freedom to be the best architect you can be, if you want to be fantastically rewarded for the value that you deliver, if you want to have a systemized firm that produces exceptional, consistent results for you, your team, and your clients, what I'd invite you to do next is to book a one-on-one discovery session with me. This is a This is a phone call where you and I are going to hop on the phone, very casual. We're going to have a chat about what you want and see if I can help you get there faster. So who is this call for? It's for you if you want to be strategic. It's for firm owners, like I said, with anywhere from 3 to 20 employees. Or if you're doing anywhere between $300,000 and $3 million in revenue, you want less stress, fires, and overwhelm, and you want to create an amazing culture, build a solid, sustainable foundation, and build a firm that actually has value that you can sell in the future if you want to, or transition internally. Now, here's who this call is not for. People who are unwilling to make a change, people who are always making excuses why they can't do things, and firms without unified leadership. So here's what to do next. If anything in this presentation has resonated with you, I invite you to apply for and book a one-on-one discovery session. Like I said, this is a personal call with me, custom tailored for you. This is where we'll really begin to work to figure out what you want and how to make it happen in the shortest amount of time possible. So right below this video is a button that will take you to a brief application, a brief survey with a few questions, a little questionnaire. Fill out that questionnaire and you'll be taken directly to a link to my calendar, and I set aside a little bit of time, a couple of time slots every single week to speak with firm owners who are interested or would like to potentially use the Smart Practice Framework in their firm. And so on that call, like I said, it'll be a very casual conversation. You and I will be speaking directly, and we'll just talk about your goals for your firm, what you feel is holding you back right now, see if I can help, and see if there's a fit. If there's not, I can give you some resources or recommend something else that works for you. So if you'd like a firm that doesn't get in the way of your craft and success as an architect, you know what to do. Click the button right below this video, fill out the brief questionnaire, and book a time to speak with me now.